Can he see into the future? Can he predict the future, though? I don't know.
Nah.
According to 2021 in his NFL draft class grades, we're going to find out the changes he made from back in 2021 to how he did now. He wrote an article, it's just posted on CBSSports.com, and in the article he said, forget all the immediate draft grades, even if I do it. The reality is they mean nothing. It's too soon. Wait 3 years. You'll have to let the picks and the decisions marinate before truly giving them a real grade. Pete Prisco himself joining us on set to give his real grades. And of course, we have our resident GM, Rick Spielman, joining us as well to give his take on what Pete has to say, which we love. All right.
It's a representation of like what happens when people do, in fact, retire, or when a team is out of it. Yeah, he's in Cabo in his head.
It really is amazing. How much time off does that guy get? My God.
Just living a vacation. All right, let's talk some football now. So you didn't only regrade every team, but you also regrade yourself. You know, a little self-check, which we all need every now and then. We can't all just be A+s all the time.
Or Fs all the time.
Or Fs all the time. And we're going to start with the Lions. So you initially gave them a B+ after last year's Super Bowl run, one that was led by the 2021 draft class. You are now bumping them up to an A+.
Well, when you look at the foundation of this team, it was drafted in this draft. That's why they're good. That's why they went to the title game last year. That's why they were on the cusp of going to the Super Bowl last year. That's why they would have went to the Super Bowl last year if their coach actually knew how to call situational football. They would have went to the Super Bowl. That's a whole other story. But you look at this draft. Penei Sewell, offensive tackle, one of the best in the league, got him in the first round. Then they continued Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. That's a steal. And all the way through the entire draft, Aleem McNeil, a heck of a player. Barnes starts at linebacker. Through and through, they nailed this draft. It's the foundation of why they're now a good football team.
Yeah, and I thought Brad Holmes, and this was his first draft as the general manager of the Detroit Lions, really knocked it out of the park. If I was Pete, I would have gave him an A right out of the gate. Penei Sewell is a legit Pro Bowl right tackle. I'm not surprised with that extension. They eventually move over to the left side. If Decker moves on eventually and make him a left tackle when he played in Oregon. But they hit at every level of this draft. I thought Brad Holmes did an outstanding job.
Wasn't your brother there then, too, right? So at least one team had a Spielman that knew how to draft, right? I mean, isn't that the truth?
Wow.
All right.
He has nothing else to talk about, apparently. He's on vacation.
Apparently not. Okay, so that gets us into the Vikings. Rick, you were the GM at the time. This was your final draft. Pete, you go from an A to a C. 11 picks they had in the draft. Only 2 of them are still starting. What is this? What are you?
Because I was as wrong as Rick was. I mean, look, I thought this was really a good draft. And I give him kudos because he was one of the only guys in the league that loved Christian Darrisaw as much as I did. And he drafted him, and he's become one of the best left tackles in the game. But then you go through that draft, and Rick will be the first to admit, there were reasons they picked some of those guys. Some of those coaches probably wanted those guys more than Rick. But Kellen Mond busted out. Chaz Surratt's the special teams guy. Wyatt Davis, an offensive lineman, by the way, that I really liked, hadn't worked out, and he's no longer there. Cam Bynum is really a good pick where they picked him. He's a starter on their defense. But for the most part, this is a draft I liked on the surface, and it didn't work out. And Rick will be the first one to admit that. By the way, I'm going to say something really nice about Rick Spielman.
Okay.
Wow.
Rick Spielman had a heck of a career drafting football players. He really did. He was really good at it. This just wasn't one of those drafts for Rick Spielman.
It's coming.
I feel like he's shrinking into his chair.
I can't take it, Pete. It's like, I don't know how to handle a compliment from you. Now it's going to ruin the rest of my day. So, but we did this, you know, Pete, in this one, we really liked Darrisaw, what you mentioned. We loved his athleticism. And we actually traded down with the New York Jets and picked up 2 third-round picks. And they took Vera Tucker, and we ended up still getting Darrisaw where we got him in the lower half of the first round. The thing that I probably missed on is that with those 2 extra picks, we didn't take advantage of it. Okay, Kellen Mond, we took a swing at and did not hit on, as that's quite obvious. Davis Mills went right after that. Then we tried to get more physical up front with Wyatt Davis. Probably when you look at the guys who went behind that pick, like Cleveland, who went to Baltimore, probably did not fit what we did from a schematic standpoint. The guy that I missed on, that George Pate, my assistant general manager, hit on, was Miners, the guard that's playing very well with Denver right now.
Okay, so our behind the scenes, they've been doing some work. We actually have Pete's grades for Rick Spielman's last 6 drafts. Pete, with the exception of one of them, 2017, they all got worse.
Uh-oh.
According to you. So I'm not going to put this on you. I'm going to let Rick talk first about this. Rick, as a GM, when you guys are in the front office and you're going back through your drafts, I mean, how do you consider something a successful draft class?
Yeah, well, Pete, as like I said, you see my picture there? I was a lot less gray until I started working with Pete over the last couple of years, and it has aged me tremendously because of his redrafting ability, which I think you look at it where you drafted some of these guys and how they contributed. If you get lucky and you get a 5th round and you hit a Stephon Diggs or you hit Danielle Hunter in a 3rd, to me, my philosophy, whether it was right or wrong, was to try to accumulate as many picks as you can, take as many swings at the plate, because eventually you got to hit something. So some may work out, some don't. There's reasons for either some character stuff or maybe some medical thing that you didn't anticipate. So sometimes it's not just all the ability or the physical ability. There's other ancillary things that add into why they don't or do make it.
You know what? It's given us a lot of good fodder for Sundays. I mean,
a lot of content.
Anytime a quarterback, he criticizes a quarterback on Sunday, we just have to say Kellen Mond. That's the end of the argument.
Yes.
Kellen Mond.
And as much as Pete would like to be a GM, I mean, Rick, he could never do it. So it's much better that you did it.
Well, how do you know I couldn't do it? I sit with him every Sunday.
Do it then.
I sit with him every Sunday. I know I could do it.
Oh my God.
Breaking up this mic right here. All right, we're going to talk about the Bears next. Of course, there were high hopes, high expectations there, and they're hoping things turn around with Caleb Williams at the helm now. But going back to 2021, you gave them a B+. Their pick then, Justin Fields. We all know how that worked out.
And I actually like Justin Fields. I thought he was going to be a good player. And it didn't quite work out in Chicago. Obviously, you have an opportunity to get out from underneath him. You can go get Caleb Williams, who you think is the answer. And Justin Fields has flashed at times. It wasn't a great situation for him. There's talk that he has problems going through his progressions, and he needs to get better at that. And maybe he does. But the reality is they've moved on, so therefore the draft is a failure. When you make a move to go get a quarterback and it doesn't work out, it's a failure of the draft.
Pete, can I ask you a question, just because I have to know from your area of expertise, is that when a new regime comes in and they go a different direction, does that count as a failure still, even though that new staff and that new GM may not have the same vested interest in the player?
Yes, because if you are, come on, Rick, if you're a GM and you come in and you think you have the answer at quarterback, you're not going to make the move to get another one. So they've clearly done their work on him. If he was that guy, they wouldn't move on from him. He's not that guy. So it's a failure.
They never gave him an opportunity. They didn't put the players around him. What if he came and walked into a Caleb Williams situation with all the talent, on paper at least, around Caleb Williams right now?
Well, I mean, you don't know. You're speculating, but they clearly don't think he's the guy. So it's a failure. Yes, it's a failed move.
If he was still there,
huh?
If he was still there, what would you grade it? If they didn't draft Caleb Williams and Justin Fields was still
right
there.
Now you have it as a D.
Yeah, it would probably be a C-. I mean, because there's still some uncertainty about him.
All right, 2021, we're going to stick with the quarterbacks here. We got to talk about the Jets, but we do have all of the quarterbacks in Pete's grades for the quarterbacks that did go in the 2021 draft there in the first round. Trevor Lawrence staying a B. That's what Pete gave him initially. Zach Wilson and the Jets, or these are team grades, excuse me. Team grades for the Jets going from a B to a D-.
Ouch.
So that's the worst one there, Pete. The reason you're giving the Jets a D- for this particular draft in 2021 is it mainly because of Zach Wilson?
Well, second overall. Let's be real. You're supposed to get your franchise quarterback there. Now, this wasn't a great quarterback draft, but you look at the 49ers compared to them. They made a terrible decision to go up and get Trey Lance and trade picks to go get him. But you look at the rest of the 49ers draft, they ended up with 3 of the 4 starters in the secondary in that draft. They ended up with their starting left guard in that draft. You look at what the Jets got the rest of that draft, not a lot. Rick mentioned Vera Tucker. Vera Tucker when he's on the field is a good player, but he hadn't played much the last 2 years. So you look at the draft as a whole. Yeah, Zach Wilson drops it down. Elijah Moore is no longer there. I mean, they drafted him in the second round. Michael Carter, no longer there. He's in Arizona. Pinnock, interesting player. They picked him as a cornerback, and he's now the starting safety for the Giants after they let him go. He started 16 games last year. So I think on the surface, this was not a great draft for the New York Jets.
We're going to get Rick's take on this now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to agree with Pete, because if you don't hit on a quarterback, whether it's in the first 5 picks of the draft or the last 5 picks of the draft, Pete's going to flunk you or give you a D. So
watch out, Carolina. Watch out, Carolina.
You're just a hard professor.
Except if you're Will Levis, you get an A++ because I liked him coming out.
Well,
so
if he's not any good, he'll get an F2.
I think we got to see about this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can understand Pete's grade here, because if you take a guy that high and he flames out, especially at the quarterback position, that sets your franchise back so many years. And they had to actually go out and try to get Aaron Rodgers to kind of correct the direction they were going. So we'll see. They've had some good drafts. I mean, a couple years ago, Joe Douglas drafted the offense and defense rookie of the year. So that would have been an A+, I imagine, in Pete's grade. But because they whiffed on the quarterback, none of us GMs or former GMs know what the heck we're doing.
I got to say, A's make me happy. You gave a few A's out back in 2021. One of those teams, the Broncos. That's not easy, okay? They had a lot of talent and a lot of players that are still top talents in the NFL right now. Obviously, the Russell Wilson saga kind of hurt their chances, but when you look at that draft class, you now gave them A+.
A+.
Oh, they went up. They went up.
They went up. This is one of the better draft classes in the entire league, and it's a lesson on how if you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't really matter. And we saw the Russell Wilson failure there in Denver, but you look at this draft class across the board, 6 projected starters from this draft class. Surtain, arguably the best corner in the league, and they got a lot of people question that pick because they didn't draft a quarterback. Javonte Williams coming off the knee, he should be better again this year, starting running back. Minor, Rick mentioned him, really a good guard. Browning and Cooper, 2 later round picks, both could be their outside pass rushers. Stearns should be a starting safety. I love this draft. This is a great draft, but it's also a lesson to everybody in the NFL. No matter what you do, if you don't have that guy under center, it's not going to be a success.
Yeah, Pete, I'm going to agree with you on this. This was actually George Paton's first draft in Denver, and I thought he knocked it out of the park. Now, I understand the Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett hiring and things like that, but George Paton, to me, is an underrated drafter. And what he was able to find in this draft, and Vic Fangio was the head coach at the time, but to get a Patrick Surtain Jr., whose father played with me when I was down in Miami, who to me is one of the premier, if not one of the top 3 corners in this in the NFL right now. And plus, to get those type of edge rushers, the one thing when you're looking for edge rushers, they have to fit the scheme. And Cooper and Browning both fit the scheme that Vic Fangio was looking to have in Denver.
A+ for the draft class, Pete, but you reiterated if you don't have that guy under center. And yesterday you told us they should start Bo Nix. I want to know, Rick, do you agree? Do the Broncos start Bo Nix week 1, should they?
Oh, God.
Oh, no, I
Who else do they have to start?
No.
Are they going to start Stidham? Of course they have to start Bo Nix because they don't have any other option. And this is a Sean Payton hand-selected quarterback. He's going to do everything he can to make sure he has success. So I can't imagine him not starting day 1, especially with a quarterback room they currently have.
He agrees with me. Rick Spielman agrees with me. By the way, George Paton learned at the foot of Rick Spielman like Rick Spielman learns at the foot of me every Sunday.
Oh, my God. And so I guess that would put Ryan Wilson by
he's one of my proteges.
1 year. I don't know. With the First Pick podcast, Rick Spielman, Ryan Wilson there. Everything you need to know about the drafts and, of course, looking at those rookies. We've had rookie mini camps going on right now. Check it out because also Pete Prisco has a lot to say about what he thinks about rookies getting in the Hall of Fame.